What's happening, people? Back with another reaction, back at long last with some more Propagandhi. It has been a hot minute since I've been back. Part of it is I've been going through some other punk bands, strung out. I'm going through their catalog essentially, for the first time. Admittedly, there is one album of theirs that I was familiar with and haven't gotten back to in that deep dive. But also Mad Caddy, same thing, going through their catalog for the first time, occasionally throwing in some other stuff, 88 Fingers Louie, and Bad Religion as well. But yeah, Propagandhi has suffered a little bit. I'm going to try to get back on a semi-regular schedule at least, and big shout out to Ryan who requested this one, which is Lotus Gait from their 2000, is it 12? Is it 13? Maybe it's 15? It goes to show, like, the passage of time. In the moment, I'm forgetting exactly what year this is from. One moment. 2012, okay. So yeah, a little over a decade ago. I do enjoy this album, although I would say maybe of their albums of the last, 20 years, which is to say, I can't really think about the first couple, maybe even the first three, because those are so intertwined with my, initial discovery of, or not discovery, but my personal beginnings with punk rock and my youth and my teen years and so on. So, it's hard for me to see those albums, independent of the nostalgia and so on. But of the, albums post-2000, it's maybe the one I listen to the least, which is perhaps, a mistake. It's, perhaps not so much that it's not as good as the others. It's just that, for me personally, I've tended to focus on some of the other albums. Again, Potemkin City Limits, I absolutely love that album, even though it has sort of a weird place in their catalog now, given the fallout with Fat. But yeah, at the end of the day, I perhaps need to listen to this one more, and I was glad that the track that Ryan requested was Lotus Gait, because it is a tune that I actually have thought about more than some of the others on this one. And that is to say, Lotus Gait, if you didn't know, is the type of walk which develops when someone has been foot binded, which, foot binding, it's, I suppose, a complicated history. It's certainly not something that is, done or tolerated today, but yeah, it was the idea that women, it was seen as prestigious and indicative of a woman's wealth, or, the family that she was part of and the wealth. But it was ultimately, a means of control, not only psychologically, but quite physically. Feet would not develop with the same structure and, size, and ultimately that handicap would impair their movement such that they had a very notable, type of walk. And so the phrase here, I think, is being used to get at the way that, again, in modern technological global society, that the earth has become, certainly, 20th century, if not earlier, onward. There are many entertainments, there are technological benefits, and what's the right word? Pursuits that are available, and comforts that are available, that, while perhaps being beneficial in one way or another, perhaps providing genuine psycho-emotional exhilaration or entertainment in one regard or another, has the effect of stultifying any revolutionary or perhaps progressive values, ideas, and actions that you might be inclined to. Now, I think the song makes the point that they don't do this perfectly, because, people who are perhaps of a more intellectually restless mindset, and they'd like to find new ways of doing things, perhaps less exploitative, less brutal, less cruel, less indifferent to the humanity of everyone. Even people with those inclinations, like Chris and, the other guys in Propagandhi. I think this is a Chris song. It's certainly a Chris song that he sings. But yeah, like the guys in Propagandhi and perhaps a lot of punks, some of these things can be comforting to the point where, I support revolutionary values, and I don't support, corporations throwing their money around to leverage influence and so on, but they like watching hockey, say, and it's oh, well, these, teams are sponsored by big companies that perhaps, influence legislation through lobbyists and so on, where it's maybe it's ethically problematic, I love hockey, I like to watch sports, but I also feel like it's making me part of the system that I don't want to be part of. But beyond that, I think Propagandhi in this song makes the point that these things don't do that perfectly. So, even if you find yourself entertained by, sports or art or internet access and, ease of the access of information or shopping, consumerism, and so on, your mind will eventually drift back to this, but it's like, it feels like we're just kind of rats in a maze, and it feels like, yeah, everything is just put a dollar value on it, and like there's no humanity behind everything, and all these things seem to function on the backs of cruelty, or on the labors and toil of people who aren't valued enough. And suddenly, like, even though I was enjoying these things, I can't. So I think there's this conflict with the narrator in the song, where they feel like they've been footbound in that way, psychologically, behaviorally. So it's like they have progressive values, they have revolutionary ideas, but perhaps they've been lulled into this reverie, because everything can be so convenient and accessible, and it is nice to have nice things in the modern technological era, and we can communicate with people right away, and we don't have to wait forever. So we can chat with people, we can do these things, and it's like, wait, but now I've just spent 20 or 30 years of my life just kind of going on the like hamster wheel, to just so I can have cable TV, and I can have internet access, and I can have like a nice car in the garage. But like, have I really changed anything like I set out to do all those years ago? So I feel like it's a song that explores a similar territory that Adventures in Zoochosis does on Failed States, in more recent years. I feel like it's very much in a similar territory. Sonically, I think it's Propagandhi at the top of their game, doing what they do, changing tempos, having slower, more emotional parts, bursting into energy, and really having that classic old school Propagandhi, like punk rock sound. Not necessarily like the first album. I think the first album does stand alone sonically. I think it is very different from most of what came after. Indeed, I think even Less Talk More Rock is more like later Propagandhi significantly than Less Talk More Rock, or than How to Clean Everything. You're like, wait, that sentence doesn't make sense. So yeah, again, sonically, I think this one is them in their wheelhouse, changing tempos and feel over the course of the track. So I'll stop talking and we'll get it. This is Propagandhi, Lotus Gait, from the 2012 album Failed States.
I have this recurring nightmare, flitting pitch and broken feet, frozen solid to the freezing pavement. I turn away as if I do not see. I have this childhood memory of my old man screaming from the driver's seat, to take away from mine unfolding horror. But he could not undo what I had seen. Would never spoke of it again. Two more helpless citizens of the new post-traumatic stress worldwide disorder. A Stockholm syndrome is the state, desperate to abandon down the mountain horror, and shuffle on in a global Lotus Gait.
It had even more like tempo shifts and like a crazier sequence across the course of the track than I remembered. But yeah, I also forgot the anecdote at the beginning about like his dad, I guess, being in some like road rage and or collision, something like that, and the like post traumatic stress of that. And that being sort of indicative of larger themes at play. But yeah, the idea that like we dull the pain of the way we've been conditioned and forced into these boxes and cubicles and subway transits and so on by the pursuits that technology and scientific innovation have allowed for, but in the process perhaps the humanity has not developed in tow. And even though you can enjoy those fruits of modern global society, inevitably at least those who have like a disposition toward a conscience and a desire to see less pain and more positive things, like inevitably your brain it'll drift back toward that feeling of dissatisfaction, because this like type of life, the mad world, if you will, of tears for fears, is not what humans evolved to live in. So the fact that we feel, even as we are comforted and entertained, like we're out of sorts, and to feel like we're not doing enough because we're just spending our time watching hockey or whatever it may be, I think it's a very profound thing. So big ups to Propagandhi, big shout out to Ryan for suggesting this one. Do let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Peace.